June 4, 1943, at the Norfolk Naval Base, Virginia, Corporal Hermann Butcher stepped onto American soil after a 14-day Atlantic crossing. Through the morning haze, what he saw immediately contradicted 3 years of Nazi propaganda. White and black workers operating side by side with machinery that seemed to belong to a future century. Women operated cranes. Children sold newspapers. Not a single person fled at the sight of enemy uniforms. "The Americans are crazy," Butcher whispered. It was the beginning of an experience that would utterly dismantle the worldview of the 425,000 German prisoners eventually held in the U.S. What stunned them was not merely American abundance. That story has been told, but something more unsettling. A nation at war that refused to act like it. A society so secure in its power that it treated mortal enemies like errant house guests. The first shock, the impossibility of humanity, the processing at Norfolk, began with the first impossibility, as Butcher later described it. Nazi military doctrines viewed prisoners as assets to exploit or burdens to minimize. Yet here, American officers read the Geneva Convention aloud in fluent German, explaining rights and asking about dietary needs. Kosher meals. According to Red Cross records, Jewish American personnel distributed Red Cross packages and explained that kosher meals were available. German soldiers laughed nervously, thinking it was mockery, but it was not. Medical care. Medical treatment defied military logic. Wounded prisoners received penicillin, the miracle drug barely available to German field hospitals, on par with American soldiers. Swiss Red Cross report noted, medical treatment provided to German POWs equals or exceeds that given to American military personnel. Black authority. The sight of African American medical personnel serving in integrated units. With one documented case of a black technician drawing blood from Wehrmacht officers was incomprehensible under Nazi racial laws. Here, it was military routine, shared dining for their first meal. The two enemy groups who had been trying to kill each other in convoy battle sate in the same facility, sharing the same food lines and quality of meals. The Americans showed no particular interest, more focused on a baseball game broadcast than on their enemies 50 feet away. The journey, the brazen confidence of America, the 3-day train journey inland, delivered the next layer of cognitive dissonance. Unlike the secretive prisoner movements in Germany, American authorities made no attempt to hide the pose. The train's actual cushioned passenger coaches, not boxcars, stopped at regular stations where civilians gathered to observe. Union Station, D.C. Prisoners watched American families seeing off soldiers. Wives kissed husbands goodbye in public. Enemies and families shared the same platform, separated only by windows and guards who seemed more interested in directing traffic than watching prisoners. Naked industry. The train passed through industrial areas that should have been camouflaged. Instead, factories displayed their names in huge letters. Prisoners could count the B-26 bombers lined up at the Glenn L. Martin plant, which featured parking lots full of workers' personal automobiles. No attempt at concealment, just American industry operating in plain sight of enemies. Unimaginable waste at a stop in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. German officers watched American workers change shiftsmen wearing leather shoes and wristwatches, driving personal vehicles. According to Butcher's memoir, one worker threw away a half-eaten apple and opened a fresh one. The casual waste of food by a laborer stunned officers who had seen their men fight over scraps in Africa. Camp Hearn, Texas. Living better than civilians. Camp Hearn, Texas, was built to house up to 4,800 German prisoners in conditions that exceeded what most had known as civilians. Amenities. Wooden barracks had electric lights, indoor plumbing with flush toilets and hot water. Individual beds had mattresses, sheets, and blankets. A Swiss inspector noted, conditions at Camp Hearn exceed not only Geneva Convention requirements, but surpass living conditions many of these men knew in Germany. Self-governance. The camp commander, Lt. Colonel Cecile Stiles explained that prisoners would largely govern themselves, electing spokesmen and organizing activities. Self-governance for enemies seemed either like weakness or a trap. The canteen. Prisoners could purchase goods like cigarettes, chocolate, musical instruments, and art supplies with scrip earned from voluntary labor. The idea that enemy prisoners could shop and choose purchases scrambled military thinking. Paid labor. By late 1943, POWs were employed throughout Texas agriculture and non-military industries, earning 80 cents per day in canteen scrip. The same base pay as American privates. K. Racial mixing and the paradox of segregation, working at the 825,000 Acre King Ranch. K. German POWs labored alongside Mexican-American vaqueros and some black ranch hands. K. This racial mixing and work contradicted Nazi racial hierarchy theories. K. However, it was the contradictions of American segregation that challenged their certainty. Black guards. At Camp Hearn, black soldiers from the 359th Infantry Regiment sometimes served guard duty. K. German POWs, products of Nazi racial ideology, found themselves taking orders from black Americans. Requests for transfer were denied by the camp administration. The freedom paradox. Yet, these same POWs could eat in Hearn restaurants that refused service to the black soldiers guarding them. They could attend movie theaters where their guards were denied seating in the main section. German enemies had more social freedom in some contexts than American citizens who happened to be black. This paradox of being treated better than some Americans while being enemies scrambled ideological certainty. The final blow. Christmas and reverse propaganda. Nothing stunned German military minds more than Christmas 1943 at Camp Hearn. The entire town of Hearn, its population 2,000, mobilized to ensure enemy prisoners had a proper celebration. Gifts from the enemy. Local churches collected 4,800 individual gift packages. The American Legion Post 164. Veterans who had fought Germans in WWII donated cigarettes and candy to current German enemies. The choir. The First Methodist Church Choir, led by Mrs. Sarah Patterson, whose son was serving in Italy, wrote German Christmas carols phonetically and performed them for the prisoners. It's called cool lead dissonance of American mothers singing to enemy soldiers while their sons fought. Germans broke several prisoners emotionally. It's a feast. The Christmas menu included roast turkey, 1 pound per man, ham, pies, and ice cream, totaling approximately 5,000 calories per person. German civilian rations, when available, provided 1,200 calories daily. The silent ideological transformation. By early 1944, the Special Projects Division established a sophisticated re-education program, DT Tagetik Library. The camp library grew to over 5,000 volumes, including works by German authors banned by the Nazis. A German POW could read books that would have meant death to possess in Nazi Germany. Screening and influence. The program identified 3 categories of prisoners: anti-Nazis, non-political, and ardent Nazis. Anti-Nazis received privileges and education, becoming barracks leaders and newspaper editors, carefully cultivating influence over the non-political majority. The result, a 1944 report noted, the transformation rate exceeds expectations. Approximately 60% of non-political prisoners show measurable movement toward democratic ideals after 6 months of exposure to American society and targeted education. The power of waste working in American facilities exposed POWs to a casual abundance that seemed like a mockery of German scarcity. Alcoa aluminum. At the Alcoa plant in Rockdale, workers discarded more aluminum scrap in a day than German aircraft factories could acquire in a week. Food processing. At the Stokely Brothers Cannery, perfectly edible produced matolios, slightly underripe corn with irregular kernels, was discarded for minor cosmetic flaws. A letter from a pal stated, "Today, we destroyed hundreds of pounds of fruit because it did not meet canning standards. Fruit that would be treasured in Germany is garbage here." The undeniable outcome. The preparation for repatriation went beyond simple logistics, focusing on preparing PS to rebuild a democratic Germany. Training: 31,000 prisoners enrolled in vocational training, 18,000 studying English, and others taking courses in civil administration. Future Marshall Plan concepts were explained to prisoners before public announcement. Statistics: of 425,000 German POWs, only 0.52% escape attempts occurred. 87% of eligible prisoners participated in voluntary labor. Post-war surveys found 74% of returned posts held favorable views of American democracy. Legacy: nearly 5,000 former POWs legally immigrated to America in the 1950s with a 92% naturalization rate. Former POWs occupied significant positions in the new West German democracy, including 48 becoming Bundestag members. Hermann Butcher immigrated to America in 1953 and became a U.S. citizen. K. Org Grittner, the last POW to surrender in 1985, chose to remain in America illegally for 40 years, validating the transformative power of American society. The consensus among historians is American treatment of German POWs represents history's most successful re-education through exposure rather than indoctrination. The transformation was not accomplished through propaganda, but through reality. The German POWs saw democracy functioning through apparent chaos, witnessed racial integration progressing despite segregation, and experienced enemies becoming friends through simple humanity. America's greatest victory was not on battlefields, but in prison camps, where enemies became advocates through the simple act of witnessing American reality.